And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Connected for Real podcast. I am Rebbetzin Bat-Chen Grossman. I am a marriage coach for women in business. And today we have Melissa, and she's going to introduce herself, and we're going to get right into it because this is an amazing episode for you. So, Melissa, tell us who you are. What do you do?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I've got a barking dog, so sorry for the noise if you hear him. But I'm a holistic health and life coach, and I help busy women break free from sugar without deprivation so they can be happy, healthy, and love their life. I am a recovering sugar addict who used sugar to kind of stuff and buffer feelings instead of feeling them, and found freedom from that and feel very called to help other women do the same.
Wow. That's a lot. Yeah, so let's talk about stress eating because what's interesting? People in the podcast might not know, but I am skinny. And a lot of people think that skinny people have no problem because they're skinny.
Yep.
But really, we stuff our feelings just as much. It just doesn't show.
Yeah. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that. What do you think? What do you think it comes from, and how do we help ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think, it comes from maybe being stressed. I talked to a client yesterday who has a lot of stress in her life, and she was using food to kind of cope because it does create that dopamine release in the brain, which makes us feel good. So it can kind of, relax us temporarily, but in the long haul, it does more harm than good. So I think, people may use the food to stuff their feelings. They may use it to cope with stress. They might use it as a reward. I've been good. I deserve a little extra. Lots of reasons why we default to food. But I think to answer your question about how we can help ourselves, I think the first thing is to acknowledge that we're doing it, that maybe we're not using food to nourish our bodies or to give us energy or to help us be in the best health possible, but we're using it for something else.
I love that. So I'll tell you where I use food. Usually it's between like 2 and 4 in the afternoon when I'm feeling really tired, overwhelmed. The kids are coming home from school.
Yep.
And instead of taking a nap, I'm like, oh, I need the energy because I haven't taken a nap. So I'm just like stuffing, like looking for things. So because I'm a very healthy person, I love healthy food. I'll go for the banana and the peanut butter. Oh, my baby. 1 second. He wants to say hello. You said you have a barking dog, so I have a speaking baby. He's trying to communicate through mumbling. There we go. There he is right there. Say hello, everyone. And by the way, you guys who are live, you can comment and say hello. We love to see that you're here. So I like to turn to healthy foods because those are the things that I really love. But I definitely do it from a place of, oh man, I didn't get to sleep, so I guess I'm really hungry. So I go for the banana and the peanut butter, and that was enough. So then I go for the healthy cookie that I make homemade, like oatmeal stuff, and that's not enough. So then I'm like, what should I do now? Should I make tea? Okay, let's make tea. And like I'm constantly looking for what to keep me awake instead of just saying like, here you go, guys, take care of everything, I'm leaving, bye. Like I could just take a power nap and not do that. But I guess I try to like be that super I can do it all person.
And I think a lot of women do that. And what you described is totally what a lot of women do, right? Like we hit that mid-afternoon slump because we're tired. We haven't gotten enough sleep. We've done too much and we're needing a break. And even if we just gave ourselves like 5 to 10 minutes to just relax and maybe take some deep breaths before the kids got home, if we're not physically hungry, that could be a game changer too. So I love that like, okay, I'm doing it because of this and I'm doing this. Like that's awesome awareness.
Oh yeah, and then I like being really honest and open because I think that it's what my listeners like is that I'm normal, I'm human, and I'm telling that to them, like I'm not hiding it that I'm normal and human.
Yeah, you're real.
I am real, and I think it's really painful to watch people who you look up to and you think they're perfect, and
Mhm.
then it's really hard to learn from them because, like, yeah, well, she got it all
Mhm.
together, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't have it all together, and I'm still doing what I'm doing imperfectly, and we talked about that before the call, like, I'm, like, trying to, balance my baby on one hand and, the computer on the other and all these different things. I think it's really important to be honest about it
Mhm.
because that's the currency right now, is just honesty. Like, nothing else is going to work as well. So my other thing that I use food for is when I need to clean up or I do like chores.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'll do the chore, I just first need to eat something,
Yep.
right? Like, so I go for energy first and then I'll do
Mhm.
the chore, but then I'm sort of not in the mood for the chore, so then I'll find a different way to like distract myself. So that is the second time. Yeah, and it's really hard to say because it's so embarrassing. Like, just do the chore, right? Like, what is up with you? Like, just fold the laundry or whatever it is, right? Clean the table, get your act together. And I'm really hard on myself
Mhm.
in my head, right? Like, come on, just do it. But
Mhm.
just sheer willpower is not enough. Like, when I
Mhm.
actually stop and focus and bring awareness to the fact that I'm trying to avoid them,
Mhm.
then I can ask myself, like, why, what's going on, and I take care of it. You're pulling.
You're muted now.
There we go.
There you
I
go.
he pulled my earphones. So we're going without earphones. I hope you hear me.
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
Awesome. So yeah, so what do you think about it? When is the most common um times when women run away from processing their feelings?
I don't know that there's a common time. I think, one thing I've seen a lot of is if there is some past trauma, maybe food has become a coping mechanism, and so that's just a pattern that's been developed. So if it's something that feels uncomfortable or it feels hard, or if you're a people pleaser like I used to be, you don't want to deal with conflict and you don't want to say how you feel, so maybe you'll eat to kind of stuff that. A lot of different reasons, and kind of like you said too, maybe it's that having a snack and before doing something is kind of a form of procrastination. But then there's the flip side. This is what I do, is I will do the task, get it done so that I can have a treat. Like, I'll reward myself with it. So I'm almost the opposite. So I think there's just so many different scenarios, where people will use food to kind of buffer their feelings, especially around the holidays. I think it's very common.
Yes. I mean, think about it also. Like, you just brought up the holidays. Social eating is a
Mm-hmm.
huge trigger too, because
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily do I want to talk to every single person in that, room. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, let me just go get something else and more and, seconds, and oh, this was delicious. And you just keep running to the food because it's safe.
And it's legal and it's socially acceptable. I think there's a lot of different ways that people can buffer their feelings, and food is legal and something you need to survive. So I think it's almost easier to default to that because we need it.
I agree. Okay, let's talk about how this affects marriage, because I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge, huge one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's interesting because if you don't maybe feel emotionally safe in your marriage, or you don't feel like you and your spouse are on the same page with certain things, that can be a time where it would be easy to kind of turn to food to buffer those feelings and that uncomfortableness. So I think it presents itself in that way. I think, too, if your husband or your spouse has different eating habits than you do, you might kind of acclimate to theirs. Like, it's just so interesting because there's so many factors at play. It's not just food, it's always an underlying issue, and we've got to get to that. I think food is just how we mask it.
Yes, it's the symptom. That's
Mm-hmm.
such a good point. Such a good point. Hmm.
It's a lot, isn't it? I mean, if you really stop and think about it, there could be a lot to unpack.
Yeah, so let's unpack it. Tell us more. How do you deal with it? How do you work with people? What is your, like, what makes you different than other people? And how do you help people through this? Because it's just really important. It's important to know, first of all, like you said, awareness. Know that this is happening, because if not, then it's a really good escape, and you just keep escaping, right?
Yeah.
And there's many ways to escape. Some of the women I work with, because the marriage isn't supporting the business as much as they would like, then they lean into the business more as an escape
Mhm.
from having to deal with the fact that they're resentful of their husbands for not helping more,
Yeah.
right? So that's a huge one, because then you become a workaholic and you're like, "Ugh, I just, I can't grow my business any more than this because I can't deal with more work." But in reality, you actually need to do a lot less work if you dealt with the resentment and the emotions that are coming up, right? And that's what I do. That's on my end of the specialty. How do you help women?
Yeah, I think it's the big picture. And I think, in the health coaching space, there are a lot of people that market themselves as coaches and they're not actually trained as coaches. They're selling a product and they have signed up to be a part of a company that sells a nutritional product and they call themselves coaches. That's not a real coach because you're not really able to journey with someone. That's kind of the one size fits all. And that drives me bananas because we're all unique. We're all different. We all have different circumstances. While you and I are both wives, we're both moms, we're both entrepreneurs, your situation is going to be different than mine because we're not the same. Yes, there's some overlap, but by and large, it's not a cookie cutter situation. And that just drives me insane. So I think it's acknowledging that it's not one size fits all and really meeting people where they're at and what they need and looking at the big picture and not, it's not just the food. It's never just the food. And that's what so many of my clients say is they're like, I've been compartmentalizing, my health or my food or this part of my life because I thought it was just by itself. But when I'm working with you, I see that my marriage, my parenting, my work, all of these things are affecting one another. And so it's really looking at that big picture and helping people realize the integration that those parts have. It's not just a standalone, I'm stress eating because I'm stressed. No, I'm stress eating because I've got stress in this part of my life and I have resentment from this part of my life and I have past trauma and I have all these things that I haven't worked through, and it's coming out in the form of binge eating, sugar, food addiction, whatever that is. And so it's multifaceted. It's not just here's a meal plan, go do your thing.
Right. Yeah. I love
Sorry, I
that you said.
preached a little bit.
First of all, I totally do that here because that's what we're all about. I really like that you said integrate, because my program is the subtitle, like, my mastermind is an integrated life for extraordinary women, because you know who you are. You're extraordinary. You're running around. You have a million things open. Like all your tabs are open. You're doing a lot, right? And all you need is to integrate those things to work together. And what I love to do, and I'm going to bring that up here because I think it's so important, is that when everything else is aligned with God's will, then you're no longer doing not necessary things, right? Like there isn't as much a waste of time. Like you really start looking at, where am I doing things that don't align? And you can be free to let them go or delegate them or whatever. There's lots of ways to do that, but just work less when you're aligned. So my program has God at its core, and I think that it's one of those things that really makes it easier to integrate everything into one.
Absolutely. And God is a holistic God. I mean, how many times in the word does he talk about health and wellness and our bodies are temples? But I think the church has really missed the mark there. And so that's also frustrating for me because it's like, are you cherry picking the parts of the faith that you like, or are you looking at the whole picture? It goes back to that holistic perspective. And I'm so passionate about that because I think that's really where we miss it, is that we just want to look at the piece that we want to focus on and we miss the other pieces that correlate and integrate together.
Right. I love that you said God is a wholesome God,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, he created this world in that way so that we connect from every direction. Like you can't miss God anywhere you go, right? Like You can go this way, that way, the other way, and you're always going to find God because he's everywhere. And the main point of being in this world is to connect to God.
Yeah.
So like, what am I here for? To connect to God. Okay, so how do I do that? It doesn't matter how, just do it, right? Do it from here, do it from there, do it from anywhere. And when you bring all the things together and God is at the core, then you can also, I feel like you can also turn to God and ask for help, right? Like you're not alone in the journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because, you know, sugar addiction is very hard to break. I have a friend who learned about, she became an addictions coach, actually therapist or whatever. She like has a counseling thing for addictions. But in order to become, you know, in order to get her certificate, they had to do a sugar cleanse and stop sugar completely, as if like to feel through the process of what the people they're going to be helping with, drugs and alcohol, whatever. And she said she couldn't do it. She said, you know, she's like me, like, you know, skinny, healthy, fine, normal, whatever. Like she doesn't have these issues. I guess she, you know, they wanted them to really relate to the people who they were going to help. They put them in that corner where it's like, oh my gosh, look who I've become without sugar. I can't do it. Everywhere I go, there's sugar. Every single party, every single, you know, everywhere there's sugar all the time. So it's such an interesting thing when she told us that, you know, I couldn't even do it. And I didn't think I have a problem, right?
Well, it's in everything. It's in ketchup. I mean, for crying out loud, why is sugar in ketchup? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I think, you know,
I'll tell you why. It makes it yummy.
And it's addictive. Sugar is more addictive than cocaine. And there's over 200 names for sugar. So I think we really need to be aware, like it doesn't just say sugar on the label. It shows up as high fructose corn syrup and brown rice syrup. Like there's so many different names for sugar that we really need to kind of be detectives to understand where it's hiding and how that impacts us, how that impacts our kids' behavior, how that impacts our immune system, how that impacts our mental health. Like it impacts everything, yet it's still legal, socially acceptable.
Right.
Thrown out at parades.
What do you think about fruit sugars like date syrup and maple syrup and things like that?
Totally on board with that. I don't believe that you can be completely sugar-free just because there are natural sugars in fruits and, you know, honey and different substitutes. I'm all about like not depriving, but upgrading so that you have that sweetness, maybe from the maple syrup, maybe from the honey, maybe from coconut sugar. That's another really good one. But it's like knowing what works for your body and doing the healthiest thing possible. And I just don't think you can be completely sugar-free because you need fruit. Our bodies need fruit. God made fruit for a reason.
Yeah, and it's delicious. So wanted to give ourselves of yummy things.
Absolutely. And it's nutritious. Our bodies need it.
Right. Yeah. Wow, this is a great conversation. What do you think about, you know, like where we are going? Do you have any questions? Do you have anything you want to talk about?
Gosh, I don't think so. I mean, is there anything you want me to talk about? I'm an open book, so ask anything.
Yeah, I'm trying to process because there's so much that we talked about. I feel like it's very hard for me to say all sugar is bad and I need to stop having sugar around because it's like fighting society. It's like going on, you know, a crusade against sugar.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's overwhelming, especially for moms. Like, okay, let me give you an example. I am a mom of 7 kids. Every Sabbath there is class, you know, like learning things for the kids. They get sugar at the end. And by the way, I am blown away by how these like candy companies, all they do is put sugar in a little baggie and it's already a candy. Like they don't even have to work hard anymore. The kids are excited about anything. But anyway, There's like candy galore everywhere. They come home, they have like, we went to this class, we got, these candies. We went to that class, and then we went to say, Psalms in the synagogue, and then we went to friends, and there's everywhere sugar, right? And when I had 3 little kids, I told my kids that there's one thing I don't let, and that was toffee.
Mm.
Like here in Israel, they have these toffee candies, like, sort of, I guess, Laffy Taffy or something, but
Yeah.
like comes in a square.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, you can have anything, but not this. And I explained it to them. It sticks to your teeth. It doesn't come off when you brush. It's disgusting. Like you would have to go to the dentist to like scrub it off,
Right.
right? Like it's really that bad. And they were so good. My 3 oldest kids, they don't eat taffy.
That's awesome.
But then I had 3 more who did not get the message, and their memo totally went over their head. They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, first of all, it brings up a lot of my like parenting stuff, like,
Yeah.
hey, what's going on? Right?
Yeah.
But also, I just don't know if to fight it, because there's just so much, like, the world changed in the last 10 years. Like, I can't be like, okay, that's it. Don't, this one thing is not allowed. On the other hand, I really want to.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too, like, because I think the natural tendency is when we're told no, or that we can't have something, there's part of us that wants it all the more, right? Like where the mind goes, the man follows. So if we dwell on what we can't have, what we're not supposed to have, I don't know about you, but I can think myself into believing that I really need that because I've thought it. Our minds are so powerful. And
Right.
so I think that that's a part of it. So like you said, it also brings up that parenting stuff, right? And I think sometimes it's easier to, again, stuff those feelings instead of really deal with what's going on. So I love that you're acknowledging that. And I think, maybe have a conversation with them and see how having it makes them feel. Like how does eating the toffee make you feel? What does that do for you?
It's yummy.
Okay, but
See,
beyond that.
like, they're right. They're like 6 and 3, and like, why are they eating this stuff? Really, they're not getting it from the house.
Yeah.
Right? Like you would think that at this age I'd still have control. And there's the parenting thing again, like the emotions that come up. Like you would think I would still be in control of my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old, but I'm not, because they are getting it from out there. So do I tell them don't go, and like, do I make that not okay? Because by the way, the older ones, their teachers used to try to give them the toffee, and they would look back and say, my mother doesn't let me. Do you have chocolate instead?
Good for
and
them.
the teachers learned that they just had to have like chocolate chips on hand for my kids.
Yeah.
And eventually the teachers switched to chocolate chips because it's way cheaper.
Yeah.
But my, I guess this is like my second, the second wave of children are bringing up new things for me. So this is,
and you're probably more tired, I would think, so it's like, which battles do you fight? I think that's always the question as a parent. What do I give my energy to in this moment? Is it worth it?
I'm actually less tired, by the way.
Good. That's so good.
My mother has this great joke. She says, everybody told me after the 3rd, it gets easier. And I tried having the 3rd first, but it didn't work. So I'm the 1st. But anyway, I really do think that it's true. Like the first 2 or 3 are really hard.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why they're hard. I was very isolated. I'm a very people person, and I wanted to talk high level, deep, because me, I'm very deep. I'm very high level. I want to have a real conversation.
Yes.
Instead, I'm singing sing songs and things that rhyme, and I'm trying to make up things as I go along, because just to have some noise in my house and to sound like I'm actually, talking to myself, there's nobody to have an eye-to-eye conversation with. So I used to try to escape from that a lot by going to the park, by going to friends, by doing, double date things with the kids, like me and a mother who has similar age kids. So that was the escape. The escape was always like, just no quiet, no being with my own thoughts, because it was too overwhelming to be alone. That was then. And then now I have a 15-year-old, I have a 13-year-old, I have an 11-year-old, right? They're like adults. We're talking about like big things and they have an opinion and they're telling me about what's going on. And right? Like we're actually having the house is already a place where I feel really happy because I have other humans to talk to and to interact with. And I tell them about what's going on in my business. And I tell them who I met and what I'm doing. And I have a live tonight. Can you help me? And they all chip in and like help with the younger ones, right? It's like a different experience completely. And so in a way it's harder because there are more, so you have more laundry and more food and more, whatever, all the other things, more clutter, more shoes all over the house, more coats hanging, right? There's like a lot of moreness, but there's also something really calming to me as individually, because I'm so connective. Like that's what I live on, is those connections. And so the quality time is no longer somewhere else. It's like I can create it right here.
And that's beautiful. And I wonder too, because I thought of this the other day, like we have really just been enjoying our break. Our kids are off for 2 weeks for Christmas. And I'm like, it's been really good. And I think about where I would be, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and I wouldn't have enjoyed this time. And I don't know if it's because I'm in a different space now. And I kind of wonder, like, if I could go back and be myself now, but have younger kids, I just wonder how different the experience would be. So I love
Yeah.
that.
Sharon says, well, you have more experience by the time you have the younger ones.
Yeah.
And that's true, right? You become a different person because you've grown through the first layer of things you had to work through.
Absolutely.
So I think it's not fair, like you're saying, who would I be then if I was me now? Like, it's not fair to say, because they were the kids you had to deal with then, so that you can become who you are now.
Yeah.
And that's one of those, that's one of those, like, yeah. It's like sort of like whatever, those questions of like, what would it be like?
That don't really serve a purpose in asking, because you don't ever know.
You never know. But I think it's really important also to be like, it is easier, also because there's systems. We didn't have systems in place. Like in the olden days, it didn't make sense to run the dishwasher, but now we run it every night. And so there's a system already to like, everybody put your stuff in, everybody take your stuff out, blah, 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 right? Like we already know what's going on. Like you can't not do more than one load of laundry a day. So it becomes a system. It like runs itself almost. Where in the past, like the first couple of kids, you're still jumbling of like, what do I do? How do I function? What goes first, right?
Yes, for sure. And the way I dealt with that was just eating all the sugar, trying to feel better.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh my god.
So, and it's so interesting because I personally am like very into healthy food. I love salads, and I love, like I told you, banana and dates and, nuts and all this stuff. I found myself at a certain point a couple of years ago, I think it was after my 5th one was born, I was loading on dates and nuts. I love dates and nuts, and they were the healthy option, and it was like so great. And I kept craving the dates. And I realized that, oh, this is the only sugar I'm letting myself have. So my body is just like going for that, right? So it's very interesting that even if you think that you're healthy and you have no problem in the nutritious department, right? You still are stuffing emotions, and you have to bring that to your awareness.
Totally. I think everybody at some point in their life has experienced emotional or stress eating, regardless. Like, I think it's one coping mechanism, again, that's safe and legal, that we can use to kind of buffer those feelings or make ourselves feel better or avoid or whatever it is that we're doing. We can use food for that.
So I want to get really practical. A woman who's watching us or listening to us, and she's saying to herself, man, I am stuffing emotions, and honestly, I don't really want to deal with them. There's too much. They're too hard to deal with. They're too painful. They're too overwhelming. I just don't. I rather eat the sugar than have to deal with the emotions. And now that I brought awareness to it, I don't even know if I want to change it. What do
Mhm.
you say to that?
That's okay. I mean, it's your choice. I can't, you and I can't make anybody change something that they're not willing to change. That has to be something I think that they come to on their own. I will say that I felt that way. I remember just feeling so overwhelmed and almost frozen at the thought of, oh my gosh, how do I change this? But I knew that because of where I was and my situation, I didn't want to continue that way. And so I knew that something had to change, and it was me. And so I think the pain of what I was in overrode the not wanting to stay the same. Because I think you get to a point where the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of changing. And so I
Hmm.
think everybody will come to that point on their own eventually, or maybe they won't. And that's their choice. That's okay.
Yeah. So I have an answer to this, but I'm gonna get to it soon. I want to hear more about your story. What
Mm-hmm.
happened in that moment? Like, what was the tipping point for you?
Yeah, so it was 10 years ago, and we had, well, I guess it's 11 now. Oh, 10, 11 years ago, and we had a newborn baby. He wasn't sleeping through the night, so I was exhausted. We had our 2-year-old who had some undiagnosed sensory challenges and food intolerances we didn't know about. My husband was traveling from work, and on top of that, I had just gotten diagnosed with PTSD from childhood trauma. And so all through my life, even I remember being an 8-year-old girl and hiding cookies and candy and Pop Tarts and sweets in my room to kind of cope with what I was experiencing as a kid. And so food was my coping mechanism even as a child. But my diagnosis, the food allergies, the being exhausted, my husband traveling, it all made me really angry. I was resentful. I wasn't showing up as the wife and the mom and the woman I wanted to be. I didn't like how I was treating my family. I didn't like how I was treating my kids. I didn't like really anything. And I'm like, there has to be a better way. And so that's what propelled me to change. And um, by God's grace, I found holistic healing and nutrition, and that changed everything for me. I tried traditional medicine. It didn't work for me. It works for some people, but that wasn't my experience. So the naturopath and the holistic doctor really set me on that healing course of food as medicine. And I'm so thankful for that because it changed everything, because that's not the way that I grew up at all.
Sometimes you have to go through like an eye-opening experience like that, which is really very powerful. So,
And painful, to be honest. It was very painful.
did you did you do coaching for yourself before you became a coach? Like, how did you find coaching?
Yeah, I did. So I remember, I think this was after we got married. I had hired a life coach because I felt like, I'm married. I know that I want to have a family. I don't want to work full time like my parents did. I want to be home, but I don't want to just be home. Like, I need to find my sweet spot where I can work and I can have something for me, but I'm not a workaholic like my parents were, and I'm not consumed by that. Like, I want to have a family balance. And so I met with a life coach for that. And then after both kids were born, I started meeting with another coach for that same reason. We were in a different city and state by that point. So started coaching again because I just felt lost as a mom. Oh my gosh, what do I do? I want to be a good mom, and I want to use my gifts and skills and talents. And like you said, I'm very deep and I like to talk to people, and singing nursery rhymes and changing diapers all day isn't cutting it for me. I don't feel fulfilled in this. And so yeah, I did coaching before I became a coach.
I love that. My first time I ever did coaching was when I had the 3 kids. I just had my third, and I remember sitting in her house crying that I'm a bad mother.
Mhm.
And if I didn't have that experience, I don't think I would understand or relate to women who feel like they're bad mothers. But I I'm telling you, now that I think back to it, I think to myself, like, just because you didn't have food ready for them when they came home at 1:30 or 2 o'clock. But yes, but that really breaks you because you think there's something wrong with you, that you can't get your act together, right? Like, and I had to go through so much, just like coaching and figuring out what works for me. Because like you said, everything is so individual. Not everything that's working for everyone is going to work for you. and you have to find what's unique to you and what your strengths are. And so that's, I think that you do that and I do that in our coaching. Like, we really don't do the whole one size fits all. This is what you need to do and go do it. We're so individualized, which is something that I think, personally is really important because each one of us is so unique. Also in my marriage coaching, that's one of the things that I really teach about. Also I have a virtual retreat, and day one is connect to yourself, because you have to know you in order to know what you want, in order to know what makes you happy, right? Like, you can't expect someone else to tell you. You can't figure out what the book says or what, whatever, like, people are selling you. It has to come from within.
Absolutely. And I think, how many times have we tried to do what somebody else has done for them that's worked well, and it hasn't worked for us, and then we feel like a failure. I felt like a failure, right? Like, my big thing was, oh my gosh, I have to have the house cleaned up and dinner has to be ready by the time my husband gets home. And I would try all of these different things that people were telling me to do, and they weren't working for me. And then that added to me feeling like a bad mom and like a failure. And then the guilt and the shame and the condemnation came in, and I was a hot mess because I hadn't figured out what worked for me.
Right. So what did you end up doing that actually worked?
I got coaching. I figured out what worked for me. I learned like how my brain is wired, how my personality is wired, what I need, and really kind of focused on my strengths. I'm really good at organizing and setting up systems, like you said. And so it was like figuring out, okay, if I can do this then, and this will get done. Like, it was just really like trial and error and figuring out, I can take pieces from this person that worked because I think it will work for me. And if it doesn't, then I'll move on and try the next thing. But it was a lot of work.
Yeah, I think you said something really important that we have to touch on. I can try things and take from everyone. And if it doesn't work, keep moving forward. Because a lot of times what I see is, well, I tried that already and it didn't work, so I guess there's nothing to do, right? A lot of people will say that about their marriage. We tried therapy. It didn't work. We tried, counseling. It didn't work. So it must be that we're unhelpful. There's no help for us. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Right? You keep looking and you keep finding. So I think it's really important not to give up and to keep finding what works for you. And if something doesn't work, then thank you for that failure, because now I'm one step closer to success.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's that mindset about failure. Failure isn't final, right? Like, failure just gets you one step closer to where you want to go. And I think you can learn from failing. I think you can, if you pause, I think that's the key, is pausing and taking time and saying, okay, what didn't work well with this? What did work well? And what can I take from it going forward? I think that's huge.
I love that. I love that, because pausing was just in the class I went to this morning, where it was like, all you need is to just pause, right? And that is just exactly what we're saying now.
It's powerful, but we don't really give ourselves that permission to pause.
Permission to pause. We should make a whole
slogan.
Yes. Permission to pause. It's huge. It is huge.
It is, because you have to remember we're human beings, not human doings. And I think if you're an achiever, or if you're a perfectionist, or if you feel like you need that external validation, it's easy to get caught up in the doing and the task list and things looking a certain way and being a certain way. And we neglect ourselves in the process.
Yeah. So let's talk about that more, because I want to, hey, you okay? Okay. Let's talk about that more, because there's, permission to pause is a huge thing, because we don't give ourselves permission to pause. And that's also a protective mechanism, because if we pause, then we actually have to listen to our emotions. We actually have to hear what's happening in our head. And it's not a very nice place sometimes, right? I had a teacher who said that all the cereal boxes are one of those things that is, are the top read things in America, right? Because you're sitting there eating your breakfast, and all you do is reading over and over again, breakfast of champions, right? And you read the back, and you read the front, and you read the label, and you read whatever, because we can't sit still. We can't sit with our thoughts. It's scary.
And it's worse now with this.
Right. It is. I guess the cereal boxes are losing a lot of readers.
They probably are, sadly, because people now have tech neck from looking down at their screens.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, anybody who's on the podcast and listening to this, she was pointing to her phone. Yes, phones are a big problem.
It's
Almost as
another
bad
way
as
to buffer your feelings, though. I mean, if you think about it, we have so many ways that we can buffer with our feelings, whether it's, drugs or alcohol or food or social media or work or whatever it is. Like, there are lots of ways that we can buffer our
I want
feelings.
to add, I want to add to your list all the good stuff too,
Yeah.
which means helping others, right? There's
Yeah.
a lot in my community, for example. You can be making food for women who just had a baby, to running, and getting medicine for people who are sick, to visiting the person who just, lost her parent, whatever it is. And you can be a really nice person
Mhm.
and a really good person on the outside, but really you're doing it because you don't want to sit still and listen.
Mhm.
Like you can use the good things to
Yeah.
buffer your emotions just as much as the bad things. And that
Absolutely.
sometimes confuses people because they think that, like, oh, but this is fine. This is
Mhm.
okay. Right? Like I was saying, I'm eating dates. For crying out loud, it's not even a bad food, right? It's like,
Mhm.
this is great. It's healthy, and everybody knows me for my dates and nuts because I have them all the time. I always have them on hand. You have to have, that energy boost sometimes, and so I always have it. By the way, now it's really funny, but like I don't crave it anymore.
Mhm.
Now I go for something different, like a spoonful of nut butter or whatever, like whatever my brain is going for at the time. But um, a lot of times we have good things that we run to, and it makes us feel like a good person, but really your body knows.
Totally. Totally. And I think, too, along the lines of serving, there can be this underlying, desire or subconscious thought of, oh, well, I look really good to people. And I think, we can hide a lot by how we show up and how we act in public. But if that's not who you are behind closed doors, that can be kind of, maybe something to look into.
And you know what happens next, by the way? It's called meta emotions, because you're ashamed
Yeah.
that you look so good on the outside, and really if they only knew what was going on the inside.
Yep.
And then that shame creates more shame. Like, I'm ashamed for feeling ashamed. So now, like, right? And then we go into that cycle. So first things first, just know you're normal.
Yes.
Don't be ashamed. We all have it.
Totally.
Stuffing emotions is a normal need in order to survive. It's a protective mechanism, because if you had to feel every feeling and deal with everything that's coming up, you would not be living. Like, you would just be sitting and doing the work all day, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important not to be too hard on yourself. And like I promised I was going to give an answer to something that I asked for before. So I'm going to do that now. I think that bringing awareness is 90% of the work.
Mhm.
And sometimes you don't even have to deal with the emotion in order to get rid of the stuffing. So what I mean by that is, there's a book, Heal Your Back Pain Without Surgery, by I think it's Dr. Sorno. And his whole thing is that your spine and your body is basically helping you to not feel the emotional pain by
Mhm.
giving you back pain, lower back pain, shoulder pain, whatever, right? So you end up having a physical pain that's not really physical.
Mhm.
And he found that if he sent people to physical therapy just to pretend that they're actually helping their back, it wasn't working because they still weren't addressing the emotional pain.
Yeah.
But if he told them, say this, thank you, back, for protecting me from this emotional pain. I'm not going to deal with the emotional pain right now because I don't have the energy for it or the time or the ability, but I'm aware that it's not physical. So you don't have to help me anymore. The back pain went away because it was just awareness. That was enough.
Mhm.
The awareness was enough to make the disconnect between the back pain and the emotional pain, the awareness. And he didn't actually need you to address it. Of course, eventually you want to address it because you realize, oh, like it's causing me a lot of pain. It's not
Mhm.
worth it. Like you were saying, the emotional pain is too much to handle. It's not worth it to carry it. So you bring it up and you deal with it. But even if you don't deal with it, the awareness of disconnecting the two parts, like the emotional eating or the stress eating and the emotional pain, is 90% of the work.
Mhm.
So I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that's really important for that. Remember that woman who said, we said, is listening and going, oh my gosh, I can't do it. I just can't. So no, you can do it. Just being
Mhm.
aware. Say, I'm aware that this is emotional eating. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm still going to eat the cake. I'm still going to eat
Yeah.
the banana and whatever. Like, I'm still going to do it. But now I'm aware of it.
Absolutely. And I think along with that awareness, bring in some curiosity. So instead of maybe judging yourself for, okay, I emotionally ate, get curious and ask, what am I looking for in this moment? What do I need? I think that can be a really powerful reframe, because I think with the awareness, we need to be curious instead of judgmental, because we could go one of two ways.
Ooh, I love that you said this. The judgment. Oh, say more.
Well, I mean, we are our own worst enemy a lot of times, and we say things to ourselves and we have expectations of ourselves that we would not put on other people. And so, if we can replace judgment with curiosity and kindness, that can be really powerful, because if you acknowledge, okay, I am emotionally eating, or I'm turning to sugar, or I'm doing this, ask yourself why. What are you looking for? Because usually it's just an underlying, not not a craving, but it's an underlying messenger of something that needs to be addressed, it needs to be worked through, it needs to be acknowledged. And that doesn't have to be hard or painful, it just needs to be addressed.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Treat it with curiosity and not
Mhm.
judgment. Oof.
Yeah.
If we could do that, that'd be awesome.
It would change the world.
Yes, and it's harder than, it's really hard to be kind to ourselves because we have this cultural belief
Mhm.
that if it's not going to be done if it's not, if it's not willpower. If you can't talk yourself into it, then nothing will,
Mhm.
get you to do it. If you're not going to like, beat yourself up, then nothing's going to change. And it's actually really counterproductive.
It is, because I think to your earlier point, like, our bodies are amazing. They were put on the job to protect us, to keep us safe, and our brains do the same. But I think the thing is, our brains don't know the difference. So let's say that you have stress from, your kids are screaming, like life feels really chaotic at home. That's going to cause your body to go into the stress, fight or flight or freeze response, which is going to be the same reaction your body would have if you were to be approached by a tiger and you were going to be chased by a tiger. Like, your brain doesn't know the difference between a tiger attacking you and stress at home. So your body's going to respond the same way. So our bodies are amazing. They were put on the job to keep us safe. We just need to get the body and the brain into alignment and really integrate again those two, and let them know, you know what, like you were saying with the back pain, like, thank you for being on the job. Thank you for keeping me safe. The way that we've done that of using sugar and food, I don't need to do that anymore. I'm learning a new way. You're safe. We're in this together. So let's do it. Like, that's actually a session I do in my coaching practice, is really helping women kind of let go of those old beliefs and focus on the new, because we have to do that.
I love that. I love that. And I also think that it's really important to be aware that you don't have to get to a breaking point in order to change, right? Like we always think also in sales, like look for the pain point in order to
Mhm.
help them because they're obviously in enough pain that they want help. But like, no, what if we were to come from a different,
Yeah.
what if we were to say, you know, this also happened to me when I had my aha moment that this is what
It's my cat.
something.
Sorry. See, now I have a cat. We have a dog and a cat. There she is.
Oh, there she is. Well, cat, please don't lick the mic
Thank
because then
you.
we can't hear. Thank you for protecting us, but we don't need your help right um, yeah. So what was I saying?
in sales, the pain point? What if we had a different perspective?
So what happened was, I'll tell you quick because our time's almost over. What happened was that I had my aha moment that I have to leave graphic design, which I was doing for 15 years, and switch over to the marriage coaching. And so I was going through that transition, and I was in the park with my kids while a different woman was telling me how she had a complete breakdown, and that's what made her realize that she has to leave her old job and start doing this new thing. And so I'm like, wow, isn't that amazing? We're both going through like a process of refocusing our energies and whatever it is. So she's like, but how is it that I had to go through a breakdown and you didn't have a breakdown? You just had this like aha moment, right? Like clarity. So that was such an important question that she asked, because she believes that you have to break in order to, in order to become something. And I then went back to really think, like, how did it happen to me? How did I do that? And the answer was prayer. Like, I was asking God to show me, and I was open to seeing the answers. And then when I opened my mastermind almost a year ago, and one of the ladies committed to herself to, joining the program, and she's never done such a thing in her life. Like, wow, this is a new thing that she's going to work on herself and really give herself the gift of being part of a mastermind and learning these skills. Her life started shifting without breakdowns. Like, things didn't have to break in order for her to shift. And that was a huge aha, for her. And it was proving the point that I was making, which was, you don't actually have to break in order to have those shifts.
Yeah, you don't have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough.
Yes. And one of the things that I think we believe is that we do. Right? Something has to give. Something has to break. Something has to.
So it's almost like a being proactive instead of reactive approach, right? Like, because I look at like my story, and if I had been proactive with my health and my nutrition, I might not have gotten to that point. But I did have the breakdown to have the breakthrough. But I don't want everybody to have that. Like you said, like, I believe you can have the breakthrough without the breakdown. And it is that awareness of maybe where you're headed.
Right. I think the awareness of where you want to be going, because, when I ask people in a consultation, they want to work with me, and I say, okay, so what do you really want? And they say, I just don't want this anymore. I don't want him to be so selfish. I don't want that, that I'm working all the time. I don't want that. I'm working so hard. I don't want that. He doesn't respect me. I don't want that, blah, blah, blah. Right. And they keep going into what I don't want. I was like, yeah, but I asked, what do you really want?
Yeah.
And that is huge, because once you know what you want, then you know where you're going.
Yes, totally. Because without vision, the people perish, right? Like, we have to have the vision of what we want and where we're going in order to get there.
Yes. Yes. I love this conversation. We can go on forever, you guys.
I know.
Thank you for all those who sent in comments. Thank you, Sharon. That was beautiful. Thank you, Elizabeth, for coming and saying hi. How can people find you? You're just awesome.
Well, thank you. As are you. My website is free, the number 2, the letter B, coaching.com. So freetobecoaching.com is my website. And on social media, I'm Happy Healthy Mama. I've got a Facebook group. That's pretty much the main places. I'm on Instagram as well as free2be_coaching. So.
Wow. That's cool. Very awesome. And I did mention my retreat, so I'm going to give you guys the link. It's a free virtual retreat. It's 7 days, 1 hour a day on Zoom. It's called the Marriage Breakthrough Retreat, because we're going to take your marriage and break through to the next level. You're so cute. You want to talk also? You want to tell them? Yeah. And actually, this is probably the last time I'm doing the Marriage Breakthrough Retreat for live. So you really want to sign up for this one, because I'm making it pretty awesome and epic. And people who come live end up having major breakthroughs. People who watch the replays also have breakthroughs. But, the people who come live always say, like, oh my gosh, I felt so, like, the energy in the room, right? That type of feeling. So definitely try and show up. It's 1 p.m. Eastern every day. We start January 17th. So you still have time to sign up. And yeah, the link, connectedforreal.com/retreat. So I will see you there. This was awesome. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you, baby, for being with us and making
Yes.
noises, and Kat and
Yes.
everybody. We're all working together here to make this an awesome time for you. Entertainment at its best.
In real life.
Imperfect and perfect. Thank you very much. Don't forget to stay connected for real. I will see you next